Andy Reid's very first draft pick as a head coach was booed by Eagles fans on national television. And if this hire failed, the franchise could be stuck in a vicious losing cycle. Instead, over the next few years, Reid turned Philadelphia into one of the most dominant teams in the NFC. So how could a team that came this close to a dynasty suddenly fall apart? When Reid was brought in, the Eagles were terrible. They hadn't been to a Super Bowl in 19 years, and they'd only won 2 playoff games since then. It wasn't like there was one clear reason why things kept falling apart either. It was one thing after another. From Dick Vermeil quitting after the 1982 strike season to Randall Cunningham tearing his ACL on the first play of the 1991 season, something always seemed to go wrong. But none of that compared to their 1998 season. The Eagles went 3-13. Their offense ranked dead last in the entire league, scoring 161 points on the year, which is barely over 10 points per game. They cycled through 3 quarterbacks, Coy Detmer, Bobby Hoying, and Rodney Peete. Their head coach Ray Rhodes was fired at the end of the year, and the Eagles were left desperately looking for answers. What they found was a 40-year-old quarterbacks coach from Green Bay who turned up to the interview with a huge book of ideas packed with everything he would do to turn the team around.
Ray Rhodes was a tremendous football coach. That part's history, and now we're going for it.
Hiring Andy Reid raised eyebrows from the start. At the time, he was the second youngest head coach in the league.
I explain it to the players. I tell them up front what they're going to do and what they're expected to do, and you've got to put yourself in a certain mindset once you go out there, and that's what I want. I want the coaches feeling that way. I want the players to know that that's what we're doing, and I think it all carries over into the game.
And one of his first moves was drafting Donovan McNabb second overall, a decision that left Philly fans at the draft booing and chanting for Ricky Williams instead.
With the second pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Donovan McNabb, quarterback, Syracuse University.
Reid didn't blink though. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he built everything around McNabb's strong arm and his mobility. That 1999 season was a transition year. A guy named Doug Peterson, who later became a Super Bowl winning head coach for Philly, started most of the early games while McNabb learned the system. The Eagles went 5-11, but they scored 272 points, which was a huge step up from their previous season, and you could see that things were headed in the right direction. Then 2000 happened, and it caught a lot of people off guard. You could see it right from the season opener in Dallas. It was 109 degrees at Texas Stadium on September 3rd, and while the Cowboys were cramping up at the second half, Reid and the Eagles training staff had the players drinking pickle juice all week to prevent exactly that. After losing the coin toss, the Eagles opened up with an onside kick to set the tone. Deuce Staley ran for 201 yards, and they blew Dallas out 41-14. That was their mindset for the entire year. Philadelphia went 11-5, and McNabb was on fire. He had 3,365 passing yards, added another 629 on the ground while making his first Pro Bowl and even coming in second for MVP. And the fun didn't stop there because they beat Tampa Bay in the wildcard round, making it their first playoff win since 1995. It was still a rough finish for the Eagles as they lost their divisional round matchup to the Giants, but for the first time in a long time, fans started to have some hope. Coming off that loss to New York, Reid had a clear picture of what he needed. The defense was already good, and Brian Dawkins was becoming one of the best safeties in the league. The offense just needed more weapons around McNabb. He drafted Freddie Mitchell in the first round, who was supposed to be a reliable target for McNabb, drafted Terrell Buckhalter in the 4th round for additional running back depth, and signed James Thrash, who was previously on the Redskins. In the playoffs, they blew out Tampa Bay once again, 31-9 in the wild card, then beat Chicago on the road in the divisional round, with McNabb scoring 3 total touchdowns in his hometown.
Stutter stepping his way in the pocket, and now he fires, and all alone, sitting in the end zone for a touchdown.
That set up a trip to St. Louis for the NFC Championship game against the Rams, who were still running the greatest show on turf. It was a really close game, and the Eagles actually led at halftime, but their defense could only hold that high-powered Rams offense down for so long. Marshall Faulk fell into the end zone twice in the second half, and that was all she wrote. After the season, Reid was defense-oriented heading into the draft. He took Lito Shepherd in the first round, followed by Michael Lewis and Sheldon Brown in the second. Then in the third, he took Brian Westbrook, a pick that later turned out to be a great value. He eventually became one of the most complete running backs in the league. The season was rolling until week 11, when McNabb broke his ankle. He played the entire game against the Cardinals hurt and still went 20 for 25 for 255 yards and 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, that meant he had to miss the rest of the regular season. Most teams would fall apart at that point, but the Eagles went 5-1 with their backups AJ Feely and Coy Detmer to earn the #1 seed in the NFC. With McNabb back in action for the playoffs, they beat Atlanta in the divisional, then ran into Tampa Bay for the 3rd straight year, this time in the NFC Championship. The Eagles had plenty of chances, but Rondé Barber sealed the game and put it out of reach when it mattered most.
It's 1st and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Final score was 27-10. Reid won Coach of the Year for how he'd held the team together, but they still weren't finishing the job. In 2003, the Eagles had a fresh start. They moved into Lincoln Financial Field, and with that came the hopes of becoming Super Bowl champions. But their new beginning was spoiled by a very familiar Tampa Bay team in Week 1 when they were shut out 17-0. Then in Week 2, they were picked apart by Tom Brady and the Patriots once again at home. While some teams would start to panic, Philly did the opposite. They fixed their mistakes, and starting in Week 7, they went on a 9-game winning streak. Westbrook was becoming a genuine weapon as a runner, receiver, and returner. He put up almost 1,000 scrimmage yards and had 11 touchdowns in just his 2nd year. The offense had enough variety that defenses couldn't pin them down, and Philadelphia finished 12-4, earning the top seed in the NFC. The divisional game against Green Bay had some amazing moments.
McNabb. Kabir Bajat-Villamila whiffs. Donovan McNabb, what a play. End zone touchdown.
But the most incredible was the iconic 4th and 26 with the game on the line.
Plenty of time. Down the middle, it's Mitchell. Where will they spot him? They're going to get forward progress and a 1st down.
And to cap it all off, David Akers hit the game-winning field goal in overtime. So it was on to the NFC Championship, where Andy Reid was hoping it would be 3rd time's the charm. Unfortunately, Carolina forced too many mistakes and they lost 14-3. The Eagles had 289 yards of total offense, which was more than the Panthers, but they also had 4 turnovers, which you just can't do in the playoffs. That made it 3 straight NFC Championship losses. Yeah, it was impressive making it that far 3 times in a row, but the city of Philadelphia needed to win a Super Bowl desperately, and the pressure on Reid was only growing. Which is why in 2004 he went big. Reid knew the Eagles needed something different. They had McNabb, they had Westbrook, but the offense didn't have that one guy who could take the top off of defense and make everything easier. So Reid went out and got Terrell Owens. It was a 3-team trade after a messy situation that could have originally seen T.O. go to Baltimore. Owens was coming off a 1,100-yard season with the 49ers. He'd made 4 straight Pro Bowls and been 1st-team All-Pro 3 out of the last 4 years. He was widely considered one of the best receivers in football, right alongside Randy Moss. There was a big red flag though. T.O. was known for being difficult to say the least, and locker room problems had followed him throughout his career. Reid brought him in anyway because he believed Owens was the missing piece. For most of 2004, it worked perfectly. Owens and McNabb connected right away, with T.O. catching 3 touchdowns in his very first game. Along with those two clicking, Westbrook was doing some serious damage out of the backfield. The offense was flowing in a way that it hadn't in previous years, and the defense was the 2nd best in terms of points allowed. Philadelphia went 13-1 with their starters before Reid rested everyone down the stretch. That decision to bench the starters came after Owens went down with a broken leg and a torn ligament in his ankle. The Eagles finished 13-3, but their best player looked like he was done for the year. In the playoffs, the Eagles took care of Minnesota in the divisional round, then came Atlanta in the NFC Championship, the same stage where Reid had lost 3 years in a row. This time, it was different. The Eagles controlled the game from the start and won 27-10. When the final whistle was blown, Reid finally had his conference title. But all people could talk about was what was happening with Terrell Owens. He had his leg operated on and his surgeon wouldn't clear him to play. The return timeline was supposed to rule him out for months.
Every morning that I putting my foot down, I wanted to cry. Like, that was probably like the most excruciating pain ever to feel. Just having, like, fresh off of surgery, foot elevated all night, then that blood rushed down to the area. Dude.
That bad?
Dude. It was painful.
With the Super Bowl on the line, T.O. knew he needed to play.
Terrell Owens be playing in Jacksonville in Super Bowl 39.
Well, I have a feeling he will.
Philadelphia hadn't been to a Super Bowl in 24 years. Reid had taken them from 3-13 to this moment in 6 seasons, and McNabb was having the best year of his career. Their opponent was a Patriots team chasing back-to-back titles, 14-2 in the regular season, Tom Brady during his prime, and Bill Belichick's already legendary defense. New England had won 2 of the last 3 championships, so they were the team to beat. But the Eagles showed up to play. Philadelphia took a 7-0 lead in the second quarter on an L.J. Smith touchdown catch. But the Patriots were ready to fight and they tied it up before halftime. In the third quarter, New England took the lead when linebacker Mike Vrabel lined up as an eligible receiver and caught a touchdown pass from Brady. McNabb answered right back though, finding Brian Westbrook to tie it at 14. Then the fourth quarter started. Corey Dillon scored to make it 21-14. An Adam Vinatieri field goal pushed it to 24-14, and the Eagles were running out of time. McNabb drove them down the field and hit Greg Lewis with a 30-yard touchdown to cut it to 24-21 with under 2 minutes remaining, but Philadelphia burned too much clock getting there. The onside kick failed and Brady was able to kneel it out. McNabb threw for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also had 3 interceptions and was sacked 4 times. The Eagles had over 100 more passing yards than New England and still lost the game. If that loss didn't hurt enough, the locker room afterwards was a nightmare. Terrell Owens had played through a broken ankle to nearly win that game, catching 9 passes for 122 yards, and somehow, within a few months, he'd blown the whole thing up. It started with contract demands. Owens wanted a new deal and held out of mandatory minicamp. When that didn't work for him, he took it to the cameras, doing sit-ups in his driveway while reporters watched.
Do you have a reaction about being suspended for a week? What do you have to say to the fans about that, Theo?
He was taking shots at McNabb publicly, had an altercation with Reid, and had a fight with former teammate Hugh Douglas, leading to him being suspended indefinitely and eventually cut from the team. The locker room really never recovered. McNabb ended up on injured reserve with a sports hernia in 2005, and the defending NFC champions went 6-10, finishing last in the division. The next 2 years didn't offer too much more hope of winning it all. In 2006, McNabb tore his ACL in Week 11. With the team sitting at 5-6 after another loss in Week 12, Jeff Garcia won 5 straight and actually got them into the playoffs. He passed for 1,309 yards, 10 touchdowns, and only 2 picks on the year. Reid deserved a lot of credit for that, but the Eagles still lost in the divisional round. The window felt like it was closing. Then 2007 was just a hard year all around. McNabb was banged up again, the offense couldn't find any rhythm, and Reid was dealing with some serious problems at home. His son was arrested on drug and DUI charges. The Eagles went 8-8, missed the playoffs, and for Reid, it was one of the toughest years of his life. From there, you can only go up. That's what they did. Deshaun Jackson arrived and immediately changed what the offense could do, putting up over 1,000 yards from scrimmage as a rookie. They made a run all the way to the NFC Championship before losing to Arizona on their crazy playoff run led by Larry Fitzgerald. In 2009, the Eagles added LaShawn McCoy, who quickly became one of the best backs in the entire league. And that same year, Reid made another signing that nobody saw coming. Michael Vick had been in prison for nearly 2 years for his role in a dogfighting operation.
When my best friend called me and told me, I knew it was over. You know, the things that I was trying to hide for so many years or thought I could get away with was now coming to light.
Reid signed him as a backup, and a lot of people were not happy about it. But Reid believed in second chances. Vick didn't play much at first. The opening year in Philly, he came in just occasionally. He had 1 touchdown pass and a couple of touchdowns on the ground. But in 2010, the investment paid off big time. Plan coming into the year was to start Kevin Cobb. Reid had traded McNabb to Washington in the offseason, and it looked like Cobb might be the future. Vick was supposed to be the backup. But in week 1, everything changed. Cobb took a hit against Green Bay and left with a serious concussion. Vick came in, threw for 175 yards, ran for over 100 more, and looked like a completely different player. It was impossible not to start him. Then in November, the Eagles hosted McNabb's Redskins on Monday Night Football, and to this day, it's one of the most impressive performances in NFL history. On the first offensive play of the game, Vick hit Deshaun Jackson on an 88-yard touchdown. The crowd hadn't even settled in yet, but the Eagles kept pouring it on from there. Vick threw 4 touchdowns and ran for 2 more. By halftime, it was 45-14. The Eagles won 59-28 against their former franchise quarterback nonetheless on national television. And that wasn't even the most memorable game of the year, because in December they played the Giants in a game that was completely insane for a totally different reason. Philadelphia was down 31-10 with 7 minutes left. It got to the point that fans were leaving the stadium to go home early, which turned out to be a huge mistake. In the fourth quarter, Vick threw 2 touchdown passes, ran for another, and the Eagles scored 28 unanswered. The most exciting part was just as time expired when Deshaun Jackson fielded a punt at his own 35.
Jackson bobbles it and now has to try and recover. Deshaun Jackson gets a block! Are you kidding? Deshaun Jackson still not in and now in for the touchdown, no flags.
It was one of the most insane comebacks you will ever see. Philadelphia finished 10-6, won the NFC East, and Vick took home Comeback Player of the Year. Reid had taken a guy that most teams wouldn't go near and turned him into one of the best stories in the league. The question now was whether they could build on it. The offseason after 2010 felt like the Eagles were finally ready to make another run. Reid and the front office went big in free agency. They signed cornerback Nnamdi Asomugha from Oakland, who was considered one of the best defensive backs in the league. They also added Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Jason Babin, and Vince Young. The national media immediately dubbed them the Dream Team. Then the label stuck, but it also became a problem before the season even began, because on the field, nothing clicked. The defense had been hyped to the moon, but it was kind of just average. In part maybe because Reid made previous offensive line coach Juan Castillo defensive coordinator, who had never coached defense at the pro level before. The Eagles did have some bright spots though. They were 4th in the league in total yards and tied for first place with 50 sacks. But overall, they started slow, never found any consistency, and finished 8-8. Going from dream team to 8-8 was bad enough, but 2012 was on a whole different level. Just days into training camp, Reid's son Garrett died of a heroin overdose. He was 29 years old. Reid addressed the team and kept coaching. His players talked about wanting to win for him, and it was just a really heartbreaking situation. It hung over them for the entire year. The Eagles started 3-1 and then lost 11 of their last 12 games. Reid fired Castillo mid-season, Vick struggled with turnovers and a significant concussion. The offense ranked 29th in scoring, putting up just over 17 points per game. When it was all said and done, they finished 4-12, their worst record since 1998, the year before Reid arrived. The final game was a 42-7 loss to the Giants. Jeffrey Lurie fired Reid the next morning, ending a 14-year run. It was really well handled, but the timing just felt right. And just like that, it was over. With 5 total NFC Championship appearances and a Super Bowl appearance, Andy Reid took the franchise from 3-13 to a near dynasty in just a few years. He just never got that ring in Philly. After getting fired, he signed with the Chiefs, and we all know how that's going today. 3 Super Bowl rings since then. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know what you guys think. Where does Andy Reid rank on your all-time list of coaches? And if you enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.